My House of Horrors Chapter 571 to 580. Hello. Hello. Where are you now? I can help you, I can help you. Quote. Chen Ge screamed into the phone, but the only answer he got was the sound of the fire burning. Calm down, I have to calm down. He gripped the phone tightly, kicked the door open, and raced toward the tallest office building at the theme park. He ran as fast as he could to the top of the building. He stood at the highest point of the theme park and looked down at Zhujiang. The lights were bright, the traffic was busy, but there was no fire. However, there was fire on the other end of the phone, and the sound of crackling kept coming. The fire had spread. Hello, I don't know whether you can hear me or not, but I just want to tell you that I can help you. There are still people in this world who are willing to help you. The electricity crackled like the fire had burned through the phone line. There was no message, and the call was cut off. Hearing the busy tone on the other end, Chen Ge's heart felt suffocated. The author's last paragraph was probably about his own fantasy. His perseverance had not been rewarded, and after his dream collapsed, his mental state had probably gone haywire. Holding the railing at the edge of the building, Chen Ge looked into the distance. A few minutes later, he dialed the number again with a glimmer of hope. He knew it was unlikely, but he still wanted to give it a try. The busy tone rang in his ears for who knew how long. Chen Ge sighed softly. Just as he was about to hang up, the call was suddenly connected. Hello. It was a completely unfamiliar voice that came from the other end. Did I call the wrong number? Chen Ge looked at the number subconsciously. All the numbers were correct, but the sound of fire had disappeared, and the phone was so quiet that it was suffocating. It was the same number, but a different voice. Chen Ge calmed down and thought back to the introduction of this number on the black phone. The police discovered that every victim had called this number at the last moment of their lives. There was more than one victim. After realizing this, Chen Ge quickly collected his emotions and adjusted his tone. Hello, how can I help you? Without understanding the situation and not knowing what had happened to the man, that was all Chen Ge could say. Help me. No, thank you. The voice on the other side of the phone was a little weak, as if he was about to fall asleep. You don't look well. For some reason, Chen Ge felt unsettled. The man's calmness reminded him of the author from earlier. Can you tell me where you are now? If you want to find someone to talk to, I can go over right away. Quote. There's not enough time. The man spoke very slowly. If you really want to help me, can you tell my landlord before you hang up the phone that the utility bills are in the suitcase? Landlord. Then how do I contact him? Listening to the man's tone, Chen Ge felt that he was making arrangements for his funeral. He wanted to know the man's current position, and the landlord was a good breakthrough. She lives in the residential area to the left of the Fairytale Kingdom theme park, on the first floor of the 6th building. The man's voice was weak, as if speaking was a very strenuous thing for him. Fairytale Kingdom. The location of the theme park flashed across Chen Ge's mind. It was built in southern Zhujiang. It was a children's theme park, but due to some reason, it had been closed down. Do you have her number? I'm afraid I won't be able to find her. Quote. Chen Ge walked down the stairs. He planned to go to southern Zhujiang to take a look. A life was at stake, so he did not hang up. Instead, he tried his best to calm the man down. From your voice, it sounds like you're very sleepy. Didn't you sleep well last night? I haven't had a good night's sleep for a long time. The man smiled. I don't know why. I'm so carefree in the morning, but at night, I'll think about random things. I toss and turn, but I can't sleep. I understand your pain. I can't sleep at night, and I often wander outside at 3 or 4 in the morning. Chen Ge could empathize with the man, and he was telling the truth. The man seemed to find resonance in Chen Ge's sincere tone. Do you have insomnia as well? Yes, my parents disappeared half a year ago, and we haven't found any clues. I live in pain and anxiety every day. I can only rely on helping others to find some comfort in my heart. At this point, Chen Ge's tone changed. But I will continue to look for them. When I find them, I will tell them loudly about my anger and worry, and then I will run to them and hug them tightly. I hope you can find them soon. The man's tone softened, but his condition worsened like he could faint at any moment. Can you tell me more about yourself? Just treat me like a stranger passing by. Chen Ge saw that it was about time, so he asked tentatively. My life is very boring. The man thought about it and said those words. Life is boring to begin with. It's mainly because different people give it different meanings, and that's why it's not so boring. Chen Ge had already run out of the office and headed out of the theme park. Perhaps. My birth was an accident. It was my father who took care of me since I was young. He worked hard for a small salary, and he was like a random person on the street, very normal. The man's voice slowly lowered, but the speed of his speech did not change much. I was very weak since I was young, and I gave him a lot of trouble. After I went to school, I was in a state where I didn't fit in. I always thought I was stupid, and I couldn't do anything well. I couldn't focus, and no one liked to be my friend. The man took a deep breath. He hesitated for a moment before continuing. At first, the teacher only thought that there was something wrong with my personality. I thought so too. One day, the teacher called my dad to school, and they suggested that I go see a doctor. See a doctor? Yes, the diagnosis was no-beta fat tiger syndrome. It's a very interesting name. When I first heard it, I thought it was quite interesting. The man smiled, but there was no happiness in his voice. This was the first time Chen Ge had heard of this illness. No-beta fat tiger seemed to be a character from some comic. What are the specific symptoms of this illness? It's a collective term for mental disorders like ADHD and ADD. No-beta represents ADD, which is the illness that I suffer from. At the time, I knew nothing about this illness. When I returned to school, my classmates only knew that I had this illness, but they didn't try to understand it. Actually, sometimes, they just need a reason to isolate you, and having a mental illness is a very good excuse. Quote. When the man said that, he was very calm, like compared to what happened later, it was nothing. After high school, I stopped studying because I felt like I had wronged my father. I found many jobs, but they were all fired because of my personality. I became afraid of meeting people, and my illness worsened. In the end, it turned into severe depression, and I was sent to the mental illness correctional center. At the time, I was in my early 20s. Not only was I unable to help my father, I was like a leech that sucked blood, dragging him down. In that situation, I thought about it for a long time and decided to leave. I posted the last words that I wanted to tell my father online, and I set it to be posted at a fixed time. The man sighed deeply. If I had left that day, perhaps nothing would have happened. Don't even think that. You have to be alive to have everything. Chen Ge had already gotten into the taxi, and he had the driver drive to southern Zhejiang as soon as possible. I was saved, but when I was unconscious, the words that I posted at the fixed time were made public. This was the first time that I had received so much concern, and it made me feel like I was in awe. After I recovered, I went online to clear my name. I'm sorry for the trouble, but I'm fine. Many people consoled me, saying that I was fine, but I also saw some private messages. Why aren't you dead yet? Why are you still alive? I'm still waiting for someone to burn incense for you on the 7th day of your death. Sleeping pills are very easy to cure. I'll choose something like paraquat. Can't you just die in peace? I'm curious. We didn't know each other, so why did so many people wish for me to die? Is it because my death will make them smile? The man's voice came and went, and it became even softer. Even Chen Ge felt like the words were quite malicious. I don't think you should let them get what they want. The more they wish for you to die, the happier you should be. Smile from ear to ear and piss them off. The man on the other end of the phone chuckled. You're such an interesting person. I was troubled for a period of time, but after talking to my father, I realized that he didn't care about my illness, and he didn't care about me dragging him down. As long as I was alive, he would be there for me. At the time, I was 22. My father's words gave me the biggest encouragement. I was not a useless person, and I could do it. I cooperated with the treatment, and 3 months later, I was discharged from the hospital. My father knew about my condition, and he would be very nervous when he saw other people. He purposely helped me find a job that I wouldn't need to see other people. He had me act as a large cartoon character at a children's theme park. On the first day of work, the park workers brought me to the warehouse and had me choose one from a bunch of cartoon costumes. I fell in love with Doraemon at first glance. It had a big head, and there was a small fan inside. Another reason was that I suffered from Nobita fat tiger syndrome when I was young, so I thought Doraemon would bring Nobita good luck. After a simple training, I got the job. Every day, my job was to wear the Doraemon costume and prepare candy and small gifts in the front pocket of my stomach. Then, I would play with the children at the children's theme park. I liked this feeling. Seeing the children's smiling faces, I couldn't help but smile. Hiding inside the costume gives me a sense of security. Not only am I not afraid, but I also actively interact with the visitors. I feel like this job is tailor-made for me. Doraemon really can bring Big Shang good luck. I did this for a long time. Sometimes, my father would come to visit me. Actually, I knew that. Whenever he sneaked over, I would be extra serious. I didn't want him to think that his son was useless. The man's voice was shaking. He seemed to be very sleepy, and his speech was slowing down. When I was 25, my father came to find me. He was very proud of me. He felt that I had not been defeated by life, and that I had already surpassed many people. He believed that I would continue to live bravely, and then he told me that this way, he would be able to work elsewhere without worry. His friend had introduced him to a very good job. Initially, I didn't think anything of it. I talked to him every week, but gradually, I realized that his voice was very strange. Finally, one day, I took a leave of absence and went to another city. I found the friend that he had mentioned, but the friend said that he did not introduce my father to a job, and my father was not there. After I returned to my own city, I searched for a long time before I found him in an old rented apartment. The room was filled with the smell of Chinese medicine. My father had lost too much weight. It was not until then that I found out that he had leukemia. I had been fighting it. I did not have the money for treatment, so I looked for folk remedies and concocted some Chinese medicine. Worried that it might affect me, I used the excuse of going out to work. In the end, my father still left. I felt so useless. The only thing that kept me going was for my father to enjoy his old age, but I didn't expect that to be the end. It was a very calm tone, but Chen Ge's heart did not feel good when he heard it. I knew what my father was thinking before he left, so I tried my best to live, but I felt like something was missing from my heart. When I was 27, the children's theme park was about to be closed due to various reasons. I tried my best to salvage the situation, but I was just Nobita, not Doraemon. Actually, the cartoon costume is very uncomfortable. The summer is very hot, and I have to wear a tight-fitting shirt underneath, or else the clothes will stick to my skin. However, when the day comes that I have to take it off, I realize that I am still reluctant to do so. Wearing it, I am Doraemon in the children's eyes, with endless presents and candy in my pocket, but after I take it off, I become that Nobita again. I realize that after so many years, I have not improved. I am fighting with myself every day, but I have never really won. This year, I am 30. I don't want to be so tired anymore. I plan to have a good sleep. The man's voice lowered until it was almost inaudible. Hey, don't sleep yet. Chen Ge was worried that the man would not wake up after he fell asleep. The taxi sped down the road in western Zhejiang. Chen Ge was still some distance away from the place that the man had mentioned. Wake up, I'll be there in a minute. Chen Ge's voice grew louder, but the response from the other side became smaller and smaller. Slowly, the man appeared to have really fallen asleep. Chen Ge did not dare to hang up. He urged the driver, and half an hour later, he finally arrived at the place that the man had mentioned. After getting out of the car, Chen Ge rushed into the stairwell and knocked on the landlord's door. After a long time, the door was finally opened. Hello, I'm looking for a man, around 30, and he's a bit shy. Chen Ge shared all the information that he had gotten from the phone call. He was only halfway through when the woman who opened the door turned pale. Why are you looking for him? Where is he? He is in a very dangerous situation. Quote. Where? The woman looked at Chen Ge with a strange expression. The man is already dead. He was wearing a costume that came from who knows where and ran into the closed children's theme park alone. When the police found him, it was already too late. When did this happen? Before the call ended, Chen Ge's phone was already next to his ear. A few months ago, I think. The man did not seem to be sociable. He did not have a single friend, and his death was very sudden. He did not even pay the utility bills. The woman took a step back and closed the door. Then I'll go to the theme park to take a look. Chen Ge nodded, and when he turned around, he was suddenly reminded of something. By the way, about the utility bills, why don't you look inside his luggage? You should be able to find them. Luggage. The way the woman looked at Chen Ge became even stranger. What is your relationship with him? I am his friend. Chen Ge grabbed the phone and rushed out of the stairwell. He ran toward the abandoned children's theme park. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. The rusted door was tightly shut. Chen Ge removed the "Do Not Approach" sign and entered the abandoned children's theme park. The rainbow door that had lost its paint, the fountain that had no water, and the merry-go-round that could no longer move. No one had been here for a long time. Chen Ge wandered around before stopping at the door of the warehouse. Inside the room that was covered in mold was an old Doraemon jacket. Hello. Are you still there? Quote. Chen Ge had not hung up, but until now, there had been no reply. He walked into the warehouse and picked up the costume from the ground. He held Doraemon's head with one hand. I'll help you put the costume away. Take a good rest. I'll wake you up when the sun comes up. Chen Ge found a large bag next to him and stuffed the costume inside. When he folded the costume, he noticed a picture inside Doraemon's stomach pocket. It appeared to be taken at the hospital. A young father was talking to the doctor, and there was a thin boy hiding behind the young man. After putting the picture away, when Chen Ge turned to the phone again, he realized that the call had been hung up. I forgot to ask for his name. Chen Ge thought about it and realized that be it the reports online or the landlady, he had not called the man's name. It was like he was living inside the costume. People only knew about this Doraemon who liked children at the theme park. Holding the phone, Chen Ge looked at the number. 2 calls, 2 different lives, 2 different victims. What is the meaning of this number? Why would every victim call this number before they die? How am I supposed to find the specter that I've drawn? Quote. Chen Ge thought about it but could not come up with anything. He decided to continue the fight. Holding the large bag with the costume in one hand, he used his other hand to call the number. In terms of probability, the specter that I've drawn this time should be more powerful than Yandanian and Lao Zhou combined. After the dial tone rang 4 times, the call was finally connected. With the previous 2 experiences, Chen Ge said directly, "Hello, how can I help you?" It was very noisy over the phone. Chen Ge heard the sound of a train passing by. After the sound of the train disappeared, the other side of the phone quieted down again. He could vaguely hear the children reciting something. Hello. Chen Ge carried the bag and walked out of the Children's Kingdom Park. He called a taxi and told the driver to drive straight ahead. The sound of wind whistling came from the phone. Chen Ge did not rush the other party. He waited patiently. After who knew how long, there was a sudden violent coughing sound from the phone. Are you, all right? Are you not feeling well? Chen Ge's voice was very warm, and it could give people strength at any time. Do you need me to do anything for you? Thank you, but it's okay. The man on the other side of the phone seemed to have his throat stuffed with burning charcoal. His voice was very unpleasant, and every time he opened his mouth, it was accompanied by a violent cough. You don't look well. Don't stay outside. Go home, or you can tell me where you are. I can take you to the hospital. Chen Ge summarized the previous 2 calls. He had arrived after the call had ended, but this time, he planned to find the man before the call ended. Thank you for your kindness, but I don't need to go to the hospital. The hospital can't cure my illness. The man coughed for a long time before he recovered. He slowly walked forward, and the wind was quite strong. The hospital can't cure it. Yes, I've stayed in the hospital for a long time, but the illness just won't go away. In fact, I feel like it is not an illness but a part of my body. Chen Ge was confused by the man's words. Brother, what kind of illness are you suffering from? Lung cancer. It's late stage. The man sounded like he was talking about something very normal, but Chen Ge's heart skipped a beat when he heard that. Then why are you still outside alone? Where is your family? I'll take you home. It's very windy outside. Quote. The wind is indeed quite strong today. The man coughed occasionally. He was in a bad condition like he could fall at any moment. I sneaked out without telling my family. A patient with late-stage lung cancer sneaked out without telling his family. Chen Ge was reminded of the main character of the previous 2 calls, and he immediately realized that something was wrong. What you're doing is too dangerous. Can you tell me where you are now? I won't interfere with any of your decisions. I'll just accompany you. How about that? Quote. I can walk slowly on my own. Actually, after I found out that I have lung cancer, I've been wanting to go to a place. To a place. The place is built high up. To get there, you'll need to climb many stairs. You want to go to Zhujiang World Trade Center. Why do you want to go there? Chen Ge rarely went to the city, but he knew that the World Trade Center was the tallest place in Zhujiang. Standing there, one could look down on the whole of Zhujiang. With that in mind, Chen Ge immediately gestured for the driver to drive to Zhujiang World Trade Center. The man did not answer Chen Ge's question. He kept coughing, and just listening to him over the phone made Chen Ge uncomfortable. Brother, why don't you stay where you are? I'll go get you in a bit. There's no need. After the man finished coughing, he seemed to think that Chen Ge was not a bad person. After a moment of silence, he voluntarily said, You are very similar to my previous attending doctor, be it the way you speak or the way you do things. Don't tell me you're an imposter. Attending doctor. Chen Ge was thinking seriously about whether he should play a role to get more information out of the man. He knew that there was something wrong with his number. Every victim had called this number. Thinking about it, the last person they had contact with was probably a doctor, so this number probably belonged to one of the doctors. Don't take it to heart, I'm just saying. The man did not have a sense of humor, and his smile was forced. It was clear that he was in pain. Brother, can you tell me more about you? Sometimes, it's hard to keep things buried in one's heart, so it's better to share them. Southern Zhujiang was not far from the World Trade Center, and Chen Ge felt like he would be able to make it this time. I'm fine. I was a normal person for the first half of my life. Probably due to my smoking habit, I was diagnosed with lung cancer last year. The man's voice was even. Other than the occasional coughing, his emotions did not fluctuate much. After 3 treatments at the cancer hospital, I went home. I planned to enjoy the last moments of my life and be a happy person. I'm not a coward, and I'm trying my best to fight against it. This is a war of attrition. I need to use my best attitude and the happiest things to defeat it, but it wants to use pain and fear to crush me. This war that happened on my body was very intense. I told it that I would not admit defeat, and it used many methods to make me lower my head. It became difficult to breathe, and there was constant pain all over my body, low fever, and so on. My weight kept dropping, and my limbs hurt so much that I couldn't lift them. Every cough affected my whole body, but I refused to take the painkillers. I'm really not a coward. This was the second time the man had emphasized that he was not a coward. Chen Ge did not ask for the reason. He only nodded and said, I understand. The man seemed to sigh in relief. About 1 month later, a lymph node that could be touched with my finger appeared on my neck. At the time, I felt like I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't even drink water. After seeing the doctor, they said that it was due to the swelling of my throat and the swelling of the lymph node that was pressing on my esophagus. I failed to defeat my last enemy, and now I have another one, but I will not admit defeat. The man was a very stubborn person, just like how he kept emphasizing to Chen Ge that he was not a coward. The wind grew louder, and the sound of the children reciting their poems could no longer be heard. The man continued to move forward. Brother, can you just tell me where you are now? I'll go pick you up, okay? Chen Ge was really worried about the man. He had a feeling that if he went there now, he might be able to change something, even if the hope was small. I'm on a long flight of stairs. The man wanted to say it with a smile, but once he opened his mouth, he started to cough violently. On the stairs, Chen Ge listened to the howling wind on the man's side and felt that something was wrong. A staircase built outside the building. Has he already reached the World Trade Center? Has he climbed to the top? Chen Ge had been to the World Trade Center before, and there was no outdoor staircase there. He realized that he might have found the wrong place. I'm climbing the stairs, climbing toward the place that I want to go. I should be there soon. When the man spoke, the pain in his body did not disappear. Every cough was a torment for him. Chen Ge had the somewhat impatient driver stop the car first. He held the phone and thought about what the man had said. Stairs, the place that I want to go is high up. Chen Ge could hear the pain hidden in the man's words. The man kept emphasizing the intense battle with his illness, emphasizing that he was not a coward, emphasizing that he had not run away. Why would a person like this sneak out one day behind his family's back? When he was in so much pain, why did he want to go to a place high up? Chen Ge listened carefully. The man's body was very weak, and his footsteps were gentle. It did not look like he was climbing the stairs. A staircase built on flat ground. Is there such a place? Chen Ge was thinking when a memory flashed across his mind. When the call was connected, he had heard the sound of a train. Railroad tracks. There were wooden ties in the middle of the tracks, and they looked like stairs on flat ground. If that was the case, the place that the man wanted to go was not the World Trade Center at all. He was seeking death. At the end of this staircase was death, and for him, it was the place where all the pain ended. It was because he had given up that he kept emphasizing to Chen Ge, a stranger, that he was not a coward. With that in mind, Chen Ge started to search online. He had heard the sound of children reciting ancient Chinese. There were 2 Chinese schools in Zhujiang, and one of them was built not far from the railroad. Raising his phone, Chen Ge signaled for the driver to drive there. After doing all that, he tried to console the man, trying to buy as much time as possible. Before illness, humans are so small. This is something that I've only recently come to understand. The man kept coughing. His body was about to collapse. I used to be a hot-tempered person, but the cancer slowly whittled away at my edges. In the battle with it, I realized that humans are actually very fragile. Don't go any further. Why don't you stop and rest for a while? I'll arrive at Zhujiang's World Trade Center soon. If there's anything else, we can talk when we meet. Chen Ge lied about his location. He gestured at the driver, urging him to drive faster. The search results showed that the national school that was built next to the railway was near southern Zhujiang. It was not that far from where he was. I've stayed where I am for a long time already. It's time for me to move forward. The man's voice was shaking. Every time he coughed, it would affect his whole body. The pain was indescribable. I know you're doing this for my own good, but I also wish to see other sceneries. That's why I'm going to that high place. Chen Ge did not know how to persuade the man. After all, he was not a professional psychologist. There's nothing left when you're dead. Calm down and think about the unfinished business in your memory. Think about the precious people in your life. They're still waiting for you. Every moment that you spend with them is important to them. Chen Ge drove very fast. He was getting anxious, and he kept waving at the driver. The driver was a smart man. When he heard what Chen Ge said, he realized the severity of the problem, and he drove faster. They soon passed the children's theme park and headed toward the edge of southern Zhujiang. Of the suburbs in Zhujiang, western Zhujiang was the largest, and southern Zhujiang was the most convenient, but it was the smallest. The man's voice on the phone lowered. He seemed to treat Chen Ge as his last listener, and he told Chen Ge many things about himself. The taxi sped down the road. The buildings on the sides became shorter, and the number of pedestrians decreased. Chen Ge sat in the car, multitasking. While chatting with the man on the phone, he stared out of the car and compared the map to find the national school. The man on the other side of the phone coughed more and more violently, as if he was going to cough his lungs out. This was not an exaggeration. Just from the sound, Chen Ge could feel the pain the man was suffering. Hold on, I'll be right there. Chen Ge was burning with anxiety. The voice on the other side of the phone was so real. He felt that there was still a chance to save everything. It's okay. I'm used to it. The man coughed for a long time before he managed to squeeze out a sentence. His voice sounded very strange, with a kind of relief, a trace of relief, and a trace of reluctance. He tried to articulate every word clearly, even though doing so would hurt his swollen throat and the swelling on his neck. I'm already very happy that you're willing to talk to me for so long. You should go back. I'm not at the place you mentioned, so don't come looking for me. I'll walk the rest of the way alone. The wind grew louder, and Chen Ge held his breath. He was afraid that he would hear the whistle on the phone. When the whistle came, it would be the moment the man reached his destination. Several minutes later, the driver dropped Chen Ge at his destination. At the end of the street was an antique courtyard. This was the former home of a scholar in Zhejiang, and the national school was right next to this courtyard. The driver was very smart. He did not interrupt Chen Ge and the man's conversation. After he stopped the car, he pointed outside and then at the meter. Chen Ge was in a hurry to find the man. He took out a few notes from his pocket and handed them to the driver. Then he opened the door and rushed out with his bag. On the other side of the phone, the man's consciousness became blurry. His voice was intermittent, and his words were incoherent. He was in a dangerous state. You haven't finished your story. You were talking about the first time you met your wife. What happened after that? Chen Ge did not dare stop the man from thinking, so he tried to get the man to continue. Walking out from the street, one could see the iron cabinets in the distance. There were railings on both sides, but part of the railings were missing. It should have been taken down by the nearby residents for convenience. Where is the man? This was the place that matched the signal of a train whistle and a Chinese academy. The call had not ended yet, so Chen Ge did not dare make too much noise. He ran as fast as he could outside the barrier, and the wind howled in his ears. The train track in the dark looked like a ladder that led to the other side of the world. It was endless, reaching into the deepest part of the darkness. This ladder will not lead to heaven. He had no idea when the next train would arrive. The only thing Chen Ge could do was try his best to find the man and bring him to a safe place. Chen Ge had no idea whether what he was doing was right or wrong, but he wanted to try his best to make the man reconsider. Holding the phone in one hand and the large bag in the other, Chen Ge ran down the track alone. Calm down, you have to calm down. Chen Ge had failed to save the first two victims, so he would not miss this one. The coughing came again. The man's body seemed to have reached its limit. He stopped moving and did not move forward. I'm almost there. The man's voice came out from the phone. I still miss them. I should have spent more time with them. When the man spoke, Chen Ge's pupils narrowed. He used yin-yang vision and saw a shadow far away. The man was sitting in the middle of the track, and before him was the track that seemed to have no end. It's him. Chen Ge ran toward the man, and slowly, a spot of light appeared in the dark. The wind howled, and the man's voice came out from the phone. I can see the place that I want to go. It's light, the light that is slowly approaching. Quick, get out of there. Quote. Chen Ge knew what that light was. The train was coming. He dropped the bag and charged at the shadow. The sound of the train became clearer, and Chen Ge got closer to the shadow. He ignored everything else. There was only one thought in his mind, and that was to pull the shadow away. Running at full speed, Chen Ge saw the speeding train. He bit on his lips until they bled, but he forced himself to move forward. If there was a third party there, it would look like Chen Ge was purposely running toward the oncoming train. Get out of the way. In the blink of an eye, Chen Ge had already reached the shadow. Before the train reached him, he reached out to grab the shadow. His palm was cold, and before he could think, Chen Ge grabbed the thing and rolled out of the track. The train passed by him, just a few seconds away from him. His whole body was soaked in cold sweat. Chen Ge had not felt so afraid even when facing a red specter. The wheels rolled over the track, and the sound was heavy. It was not until the train passed that Chen Ge sighed in relief. Are you all right? He quickly turned to look at the shadow that he had grabbed earlier. When he lifted his head to look around, he realized that the shadow was standing on the other side of the track, maintaining a distance from Chen Ge. Why did you save me? The voice that came from the shadow was similar to the voice on the phone. Do I need a reason to save someone? Chen Ge asked in return. He hung up and walked toward the shadow. As he got closer, the face of the shadow started to change. Drops of blood seeped out from his skin, slowly dyeing his shirt red. The atmosphere was heavy. Chen Ge stopped moving. He and the shadow stood on opposite sides of the tracks. Facing normal lingering spirits and baleful specters, Chen Ge was able to remain calm, but a red specter still posed a lot of pressure to him. To save people earlier, he had run as fast as he could. He had dropped the bag with the Doraemon costume and his backpack by the side of the road. At that moment, his employees were not with him. Chen Ge was not used to gripping the air. He wanted to grab onto something to keep himself calm. The night was like a curtain that blocked out the moon and stars. The change to the shadow was not over. His originally weak and hunched body slowly straightened, and the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes smoothed out. Blood seeped out from his forehead and painted a strange symbol on his face. It looked like a birthmark or a blood-red tattoo. Chen Ge and the man stood on opposite sides of the tracks. He looked at the man but did not get close. A birthmark. This was the first time that Chen Ge had encountered such a baleful specter. The blood had formed a symbol on his face. Upon closer inspection, one would realize that the birthmark was formed by the overlapping of multiple human faces. They took up half of the man's face. In other words, only half of the man's face was his original appearance. The other half of his face seemed to be constantly changing. This presence is far more powerful than Xu Yin. No wonder he's a red specter whose rarity is only second to Zhang Ya. Swallowing, Chen Ge turned to look behind him. He had left his backpack somewhere far away, and there was no way he could make it in time to turn back now. Standing where he was, Chen Ge told himself to calm down. He acted like he did not see through the man's real identity and used a natural tone to ask, "Are you the one who has been on the phone with me tonight?" The man had a quiet appearance and could even be described as beautiful. His eyes were not big, but there seemed to be a world hidden in them. When one looked into his eyes, one would unconsciously sink into them. Narrowing his eyes, this was the first time that Chen Ge had encountered a red specter like this. The feeling that the man gave him was very strange. He did not have the bloodiness and cruelty of a normal red specter. There was something more to it, like moonlight on a cold night. "I'm here to help you." Chen Ge did not know what to say. He could not tell how powerful this red specter was, so he did not dare act recklessly. The two stared at each other for a long time. The strange man looked at Chen Ge and spoke for the first time. "These people's lives have nothing to do with you. Why would you risk your life to save them? Why are you still thinking about this? I'm not a saint. I won't go out and do good deeds every day. But since I've bumped into them, I'll do my best to help them." Chen Ge was very sincere. "Even if I knew that they would continue to seek death in the future, at least I helped them fight for a chance to reconsider." It was unknown which of Chen Ge's words had touched the man, but the blood on the man's face stopped flowing, and his expression softened. He looked at the tracks that extended into the darkness and sighed softly. "If I was half as smart as you, he wouldn't have died." "Him? Wouldn't have died?" Chen Ge's heart was filled with confusion. "What do you mean? I only came into contact with these victims after I called a certain number. Have you called that number as well? Or was it you who left that number behind?" Quote. The reward that he had drawn from the black phone was called the number that was kissed by the deceased. Every victim had called this number before they died. This made Chen Ge's heart quiver because he had called it several times that night. When the man heard Chen Ge's voice, he pulled his eyes back. He was on the thin side, and his skin was pale. He looked gentle and weak, but half of his face was occupied by a scary-looking blood tattoo. This gave him two completely contradictory vibes. However, the strange thing was, when these two opposite vibes intertwined on the same person, they would be so harmonious. The man did not answer Chen Ge's question. He stood on the other side of the tracks, his eyes looking somewhere else, and his lips mumbled something that Chen Ge could not understand. "Have you noticed a similarity between these people?" Similarity. Chen Ge thought about it. Every one of them had experienced something very painful when they were alive. They had no other choice, and in the end, they chose to leave on their own. Then do you know why they would call that number before they left this world? The man's voice was devoid of emotion. It was unclear whether it was because he was born with a lack of emotion or because he had lost all hope in life. On the way here, Chen Ge had come up with many hypotheses, but they were all overturned by him. The purpose of this number appeared to be to communicate with the victims and listen to their words. There was no malice, and there was no curse to kill. Shaking his head, Chen Ge had a guess in his heart, but he did not voice it out. The man seemed to have expected this result. He stood next to the tracks like he was lost in his memory. The expression on his face was one of pain, self-blame, and mostly confusion. "When I was at school, I saw a friend jump off a building with my own eyes. At the time, I was standing at the window, and he was standing on the building opposite. I waved at him and smiled at him, but he did not respond. It was like he was possessed. My mind sensed that something bad was going to happen. I called his name loudly, but in the end, I could not save him. That was the first time I saw death. It happened right before me, less than 10 meters away from me. Some people say that people who study psychology either want to cure themselves or are saints who want to cure others. I should belong to the former. Quote. Hearing that, Chen Ge could not help but ask, "You're a psychiatrist?" Actually, he did not want to interrupt the man, but he had met too many doctors recently. For example, Dr. Gao and Dr. Chen, these two top doctors who understood the human heart. Not only did they fail to cure him, if anything, they sank deeper and deeper into the pit of despair. Therefore, Chen Ge had a shadow in his heart about the profession of psychiatrist. I do work in counseling, but I am not a psychiatrist. Have you heard of the profession of suicide intervention operator? Suicide intervention operator. Can you tell me what you do for a living? Quote. They were both red specters, but the man could communicate with Chen Ge without any barrier. Normally, this type of red specter belonged to the group with high intelligence but relatively weak combat ability, like Meng Nan. Chen Ge was more experienced in dealing with this kind of red specter. Since he could not reason with the man, he had to use another method to communicate with him. Chen Ge called Zhang Ya's name in his heart. Before an unfamiliar red specter, he did not dare act recklessly. He planned to come up with a different plan based on the situation. Zhang Ya. He called her name silently, but to Chen Ge's unease, he did not get any response. He turned to look behind him. The night was dark, and there was no light, so he could not see his own shadow. What are you doing? The man noticed Chen Ge's strange behavior, and he whispered, "You don't look so good. This is the first time I've heard of this profession. What do you need to do every day?" Chen Ge had been through a lot, so he immediately adjusted himself and changed the topic. Every year, there are about 1 million suicides worldwide, and this number is far more than murders. However, due to the stigma and silence, this topic rarely enters the public's view. Actually, what we should do is face it. When a person shows signs of suicidal tendencies, we should help them and cure them. We should not use that incomprehensible gaze to blame and isolate them. Quote. No one is stupid enough to look down on life. When a person is really pushed to that point, only they can understand the pain they suffer. The man seemed to be reminded of something. He looked at the endless night sky. I am a suicide intervention hotline operator. My daily job is to reach out to those who walk to the edge of the abyss and tell them that there are people in this world who are willing to help them. I cannot drag them out of the abyss, but I can tell them that there are still beautiful things in this world. That number is the suicide intervention hotline. Chen Ge nodded. No wonder the few people spoke to me in such a strange tone. They are not being strange. If you were in the same situation as them, you would probably be in the same situation as them. The man turned back to look at Chen Ge. Actually, those who are determined to die rarely call our hotline. Those who choose to call the hotline at the end of their lives actually retain a trace of love for this world deep inside their hearts. Their incompatibility, their strange behavior, is actually asking for help from the people around them. Quote. Asking for help. That's right. Suicide is not a temporary action. All kinds of reasons will be buried very early on. Those negative emotions and things will accumulate in the heart, and then one day, because of a certain point, it will be triggered, and in that instant, the person will be drowned in negative emotions. Many suicides are foreshadowed, but the people around them rarely notice it. If they had noticed it earlier and made changes, the tragedy could have been avoided. Quote. The blood on the man's shirt was slowly fading, and the blood tattoo on his left cheek was also fading. This was the first time that Chen Ge had encountered something like this. All the red specters that he had encountered before, no matter the time, their blood-red coat would not change, but this red specter before him appeared to be different from the other red specters. The man did not mind Chen Ge's gaze. He was probably just looking for someone to talk to. I've heard many reasons for suicide. The factory went bankrupt, and to make a comeback, he owed a huge amount of money to the loan sharks. At the end of his life, he still did not dare go home. At the time, when I answered the call, I could hear the man in his 40s crying. His only wish was to see his child. There are too many similar things. Every night, people become more fragile. Midnight to 3 a.m. is the busiest time for us. That was also the time when I failed my first rescue attempt. Quote. The tracks were in the middle of the road, and the man and Chen Ge maintained a distance from each other. Do you still remember the first call that you made? I remember. The author once called me before he died. I could hear the madness in his voice, but I underestimated his determination. I thought he was just looking for someone to talk to because his voice was so calm. When I was talking to him, I could not feel anything off about him. It was just a normal sadness. When the man said that, the blood tattoo on half of his face started to change slightly. The blood vessels wove together to form another person's face. I remember it very clearly. That was the first time I failed to intervene. Even now, I can still recite the entire conversation between us. The man's voice was pained. I saw him on the newspaper the next day, and I regretted it. He had given me his last hope, but I had ignored him. I was responsible for that tragedy. From then on, I would be more careful when I talked to people, but things did not get better. 1 month later, I failed again. That day was the man's 30th birthday. He purposely chose that day to say goodbye at the place that he missed the most. The man was probably talking about the patient with Nobita fat tiger syndrome. Chen Ge could hear the pain in the man's voice. A human life disappeared before my eyes. I had a chance. The blood tattoo on the man's face started to change again. Chen Ge realized that every time he talked about a person, the blood tattoo would change. Based on his experience dealing with ghosts, the lingering spirits of those suicides seemed to have entered the man's body. In other words, perhaps the man had single-handedly shouldered the lingering spirits of all the suicides on the other side of the phone. The third intervention failed on the second day. Initially, I planned to visit the previous suicide victim in person. For the first time, the man's tone changed. He was really a kind person. I once asked him if he had any wishes at the last moment of his life. His answer was that he was worried that if he died at the landlord's place, the landlord would not be able to rent out the place, so he purposely moved to another place. He had already left the electricity bill and the rent he owed in his suitcase, but he did not have any friends, so he hoped that I could inform the landlord and hand over the money. I chatted with him for a long time until he fell asleep. I should have called the police, but I didn't even know where he was. Before I could recover from the previous suicide, I ran into another one. He was suffering from cancer, and he was tormented by his illness. Unlike the other suicides, this one called me in the morning, and he had given it a lot of thought. At this point, the man turned to Chen Ge again. My job is to pull a person out from the swamp of death, but that day, I did not do that. Perhaps it was because of the mental pressure, or perhaps it was because I had been continuously stimulated, but I did not try to persuade him to embrace life but respected his choice. Quote. Every time the man mentioned a suicide victim, the blood tattoo on the side of his face would change. I did not do what I was supposed to do, but did I do anything wrong? The man's expression became even more confused. All the phone records at our place are kept, and that phone call was no exception. However, for some reason, not long after his death, the last phone call between us was made public. The recording of the phone call was released to the public, and the first person to find me was my teacher. At 5 a.m., I was sleeping in the break room with my jacket over me. Then I heard the sound of the door opening, but I was too sleepy, so I didn't think too much about it. It was not until noon when I opened my eyes that I realized my teacher was sitting at the table in the break room. He was reading Menninger's Man Against Himself. It was a book that studied the psychology of suicide. The sun shone into the room. At the time, I had no idea what was happening outside, but I felt like my teacher was acting weird today. He was the most experienced counselor at our school. He was the one who taught me, so no matter what, I would always call him teacher. From the man's tone, Chen Ge could hear the respect he had for his teacher. Did your teacher tell you about this? What was his attitude? Chen Ge was curious. To build a good relationship with a red specter, he had to get to know the man's personality and obsession before he died. Only then would he be able to convince the man to work for him willingly. He did not tell me anything related to that incident. He only asked me one question. The man looked at the dark sky. If one day, when he stands at the edge of the building, how should I persuade him? I've never thought about that before. In my eyes, my teacher is a very strong person. This kind of situation is unlikely to happen, so I told him my thoughts honestly. If that day really comes, I will use everything that I have learned on him and try my best to save him. If that still doesn't convince him, then I will respect his decision. I have never thought of my job as sacred. I just feel like my job is very important, just like the doctors at the emergency room. I will use my most serious attitude to save the patients, but at the same time, I will respect the patients. Quote. As the man spoke, his voice slowly lowered. After the teacher heard what I said, he smiled with satisfaction. He was like an old friend. He sat next to me and said something to me. He felt that I was a very good person, the student he was most proud of, but I was not a completely qualified suicide intervention operator. Teacher has already noticed that my emotions are not quite right. He wants me to go out and walk more often to clear my mind. Being a suicide intervention operator is a very special job. Excluding the harassing calls, each person will receive an average of about 20 moderately dangerous calls and 1 to 5 emergency calls every night. Under the continuous impact of the emotions, the operator himself would sometimes be affected. He would become depressed and cry with the other party. Every time this happens, you have to tell yourself that you have to calm down and convince the other party. Quote. The human body is like a balloon filled with water. Good, bad, and all kinds of emotions will be injected into it. If one is unable to adjust himself, when the balloon bursts, it will be the time when a person completely collapses. As a suicide prevention hotline operator, my brain is soaked in tears and grief every night. Many people leave after working for a while, so I didn't really understand what my teacher meant. When I was about to ask him again, the teacher patted me on the shoulder and left, but he left the book he was reading behind. Later, I found out that the recording of my phone call had been uploaded to the internet, and I became the first suicide intervention operator to persuade someone to commit suicide. Many people were criticizing me, but at the time, I was actually very calm. What other people say has nothing to do with me. I only recognize right and wrong. From this aspect, I am indeed a very stupid person. I will cry because of the story of the person asking for help. I will chat with these strangers until the sun rises, I will cry with them, I will play their role, and I will feel their pain. I do not see myself as a rescuer but as their friend. When the man said that, his expression was confused. However, the confusion in his eyes was soon replaced by blood, and red blood seeped out from his skin. Before this matter could come to an end, something new has happened. During a crisis intervention, if you forcefully stop someone who is determined to die, even if you succeed this time, they might use a more decisive method to commit suicide next time. To prevent this from happening, we sometimes allow them to try within a controllable range. For example, when there is an air cushion, ambulance, and fire department around, if the building is low, we will not forcefully stop them from jumping. I know this sounds hard to accept, but if you think about it from another perspective, there are very few people in this world who can empathize. Even biological parents find it difficult to do so. Most of the time, forceful persuasion will have the opposite effect. This is a sign of not understanding the other party's pain. Allowing them to try is a kind of respect, to make them feel real and tangible respect. At this point, Chen Ge had a bad feeling. You haven't really done that before, have you? I have done something like that during a crisis intervention. Actually, it's not as scary as you think. We try it within a controllable range. Let me give you another example. There was once a person who wanted to commit suicide by swallowing sleeping pills. His emotions were extremely unstable, and he could not communicate at all. At the time, after I communicated with the police, we found a low-concentration sleeping pill and had him try it. Quote. After experiencing death once, he changed a lot, and he started a new life. I have many successful examples, but this method sounds like it's going against our duty. After the recording was released, this method attracted a lot of criticism from the public. Quote. I was saving people, but everyone thought I was killing people. I started to think. My teacher came to find me, and many friends consoled me, but the key was not me but whether it was right or wrong. The man looked about the same age as Chen Ge, but his voice sounded much older than Chen Ge's. He looked at the endless night for a long time. The expression on his face slowly twisted before returning to normal. Finally, his lips curled up into a nonchalant smile. Perhaps I am not a qualified suicide intervention operator, but the people that I have helped have treated me as the last friend that they can trust in their lives. The man's shirt was completely dyed red, and the red half of his face kept changing. I only understood this after I died, so much hope had been placed on me. A faint light appeared at the end of the night, but neither Chen Ge nor the man turned back to look. Have they placed all their hope on you? Chen Ge more or less understood why the man was able to become a red specter. His own resentment was not that strong, but he had interacted with many dead people when he was alive, and the key was that the dead treated him as the only person they could confide in. All the negative emotions, all the sad past, and the regrets that they could no longer fulfill, the dead shared all these things with the operator, and they were buried in his heart. A qualified suicide intervention operator would know how to deal with the confusion in their heart. They viewed the human body as a conduit, and when there were too many negative emotions, it would be blocked. Therefore, most of the time, they did not dare to think too deeply about it. When the call was answered, they would patiently advise, but after the call was ended, they would not think about it anymore. However, the man on the other side of the tracks was different. He had been affected by the dead. Just like Chen Ge, he would put himself in their shoes and pour out his heart to console them, connecting his emotions with them. He was someone who was truly kind to those who asked for help, but at the same time, it was a very dangerous thing to do. When he helped those who stood at the edge of the cliff, he also forced himself to the edge of the cliff. There was a limit to a person's endurance. Even professional psychological intervention personnel would have more or less psychological problems after working for many years. Men would be entangled by new problems before they could adjust their state of mind after being rescued again and again. He reached out to grab those suicidal people, but his own body was slowly dragged into the abyss. The man's teacher had already noticed the problem, so he told him to empty his mind and take a good rest, but the final result showed that he did not follow his teacher's instructions. He became the person that he had helped many times. A suicide intervention operator chose to commit suicide. Why would you do that? Death will not solve any problem. Chen Ge wanted to persuade the man, but when he thought about the man's occupation, a ridiculous feeling rose in his heart. I've considered everything that you've said. After all, I'm the professional in this field. Fresh blood seeped out of the man's red shirt. He was completely different from the other specters. His eyes stared at the light in the distance. He seemed to like light very much. There are probably a few reasons for suicide. First, when people have a cognitive bias towards the world, life, and the surrounding environment, they will look at everyone around them with a gloomy gaze, thinking that living is a painful thing. My death does not fall into this category. The second is when a person feels guilty or guilty about something. They will act impulsively. I obviously don't belong to this category. The third is for revenge, using their own death to make others regret. This doesn't fit my situation either. There are dozens of reasons for suicide, but I do not belong to any of them. I should be considered a rather unique suicide victim. Actually, I've been trying to convince myself. I've saved so many people, but when it comes to saving myself, I suddenly realize that the power of words is somewhat lacking. The author, the theme park doll, and the cancer patient, they represent three different personalities and attitudes toward life. I feel sorry for their departure, and I hate myself for being powerless. From the bottom of my heart, I wish for them to live. I tried my best to persuade them, but after listening to their voices, I realized that they all had their own reasons for leaving. Sometimes, I envy doctors. As long as they prescribe the right medicine, they can save their patients, but my job is different. Even though I know liberation is a medicine for them, I cannot allow them to use it. When everyone on the internet attacked me, I told them what I thought. It was a public execution, but there was no bloody scene. The man's expression remained calm. Many people say that I'm crazy, an executioner, that I'm indirectly killing people, but actually, I just want to help them. The light came closer and closer. The man stood next to the rail and did not show any intention of avoiding it. People who haven't seen death before, who haven't experienced that kind of heart-wrenching pain, what right did they have to criticize me? What right did they have to act so high and mighty? As the light approached, the man spoke faster. Blood seeped out from his forehead, dyeing half of his changing face red. When I stood up from the pool of blood again, I finally understood this truth. Those desperate, hopeless lives flowed into my body. I finally understood them, understood why they would make such a preposterous choice. The man's eyes were red, and his face lost its calmness. His voice turned madder. I tried my best to cure them. Perhaps I could help them release more love and improve their ability to discover and absorb love, but I could not change the intensity of love in their environment. That's why many people will continue to do the same thing after a successful crisis intervention. That's because the environment of their personal lives hasn't changed. The bullied person has become the victim of cold violence, and isolated children find it harder to make friends. The one who can really save them is not me, the suicide intervention operator, but the people around them. Quote. Once you get to know most of them, you'll realize that the real evil ones are the people around them. Those who paint the world of suicide victims with their own paintbrushes are the real culprits. However, even if their savior dies, the people who killed them will not show any sadness. Instead, it will be their loved ones who will feel pain. Is that fair? The man looked at the approaching train and slowly raised his hands. I only understood these things after I died. Actually, many of the victims were filled with regret, but they no longer had the chance to start over. They could only place all their hopes on me, asking me to help them seek justice. Justice? What are you planning to do? At that moment, Chen Ge sensed a bone-chilling murderous intent from the man. He understood that the man had been through so many things, and he had been completely corrupted. For example, to clean up the trash that only knows how to greedily seek love but cannot release it so that more kind people will not suffer. The man used the word, those. He was not trying to solve just one or two but many. Compared to other red specters, this man's cruelty were hidden deep inside his heart. Calm down first. I think there should be a better way. Chen Ge took a step back and called Zhang Ya's name in his heart. This is not my decision alone but the wish of all of them. Blood boiled. The headlights of the train lit up the wasteland. When the light passed, Chen Ge saw the crowd of people standing behind the man. Can you hear their voices? They are telling me about their pain. Even in death, that lingering spirit has been preserved. Quote. The man slowly opened his arms, and the changing half of his face finally settled into his own. He looked at Chen Ge. I once witnessed something like this with my own eyes. The girl stood at the edge of the building, and the firemen tried to stop her patiently, but the people downstairs cheered. They treated the girl's death as a kind of entertainment. I know that is not the right thing to say, but it is the truth. They took out their phones to snap pictures and urged the girl to jump. Then, after recording everything, they might post it on their social circle and add a few words of sympathy. People like that are not an exception. It is because of their existence that some people who should not have died are forced into a corner. Chen Ge looked at the man on the other side of the tracks. He understood the man, but that did not mean that he fully agreed with what the man said. Friend, I know that there are many dirty things and people in this world. They are all around us, but other than them, there are many more beautiful things in this world. Good and bad intertwined to form our lives. I think what your teacher said makes sense. You are a person who truly cares about the patients, and you are also a good person. However, you are not a qualified operator. Quote. You have said yourself that you can change a person's ability to absorb and release love, but have you realized that you have been unknowingly influenced by the person asking for help? Your world has been taken over by those dirty things, and your eyes can only see those ugly and disgusting things. Actually, the world itself has not changed. It has always been like this, and the one who has changed is you. The red specter on the other side of the tracks was a kind and good person. This was the first time that Chen Ge had seen such a kind person become a red specter after death. He became a red specter not because of extreme hate or extreme love, not because of hatred or various negative emotions, but because of kindness. For a normal person to shoulder the burden of the painful past of all the suicide victims, that was something impossible from Chen Ge's perspective, but the man before him had done it. From a certain perspective, this red specter had more potential than Zhang Ya, but she did not know how to make use of it. The man did not expect Chen Ge to refute him. He stared at Chen Ge, and there was a special emotion in his eyes. His calmness was broken, and he seemed to be agitated. Do you know why I'm telling you this? Why? Chen Ge did not think that he could convince the man with just a few words. He simply felt that the man had suffered a lot. Whether it was before or after death, perhaps he could try another way to live. The number saved in your phone is the number I used before. The people who called you were the ones who asked for help after my intervention failed. The man's tone and expression became weirder and weirder. His facial features slowly twisted. If he gave Chen Ge the feeling that he was no different from a living person at the beginning, then the last bit of humanity on him had disappeared. The first few people were a test for you. If you didn't help them, or if you laughed at their deaths, or if you didn't care about them, then you'll soon become a shadow behind me. The man had gone from one extreme to the other, and this kind of thinking was very dangerous. Looks like I'm quite lucky. So, have I passed the test? Chen Ge knew that a red specter was not that easy to obtain. Before this, Yan Danian and Shu Yin, these two normal specters, had made him spend a lot of effort. To obtain the red specter Zhang Ya, he had even sacrificed the rest of his life's happiness. To get something in return, one had to give something first. Everything inside the black phone was an equivalent exchange. Originally, you would run into 7 helpers, but I didn't expect you to be able to determine the location of one of the helpers through some voices and find me. This is something that I did not manage to do before. The man's expression was still scary, but his eyes softened. I also didn't expect you to risk your life to save a stranger that you did not know. In fact, when you did not even know whether the person was a ghost or a human, you dared to rush onto the train tracks before the truck arrived. Have you considered this? If you were a few seconds slower, you would have lost your life. Quote. Whether it's real or fake, I had to save him. Because it involved a human life, I could not gamble. Even if I knew that this was a 99% lie, I was willing to be tricked. Chen Ge's voice was calm, but it was filled with power. For some reason, it made the listener feel comfortable. Then you really are an idiot. The man paused, and there was a complicated look in his eyes. If I'm an idiot, then so be it. I've done many similar stupid things. Many people have told me that, and I've gotten used to it. The atmosphere lightened, and Chen Ge tried to ask, now that I've passed your test, what do you have to say to me next? He looked at the red specter across the tracks with anticipation. His eyes glowed as he scanned the crowd of black shadows behind the man. Being stared at like that by Chen Ge, the man frowned. This has indeed not happened before. This number is just a tool that I use to appease the hatred of those who have committed suicide. I will use it to filter out the B***stards who have mocked the dead and then take them away. You've passed the test, but that only means that you can continue to live. Quote. You use this number to kill people. Chen Ge's voice froze. He really did not expect that the number that had once been used to save people, the number that had been entrusted with their last hope, would now become a tool for murder. When the man was alive and after his death, he used the same number in different ways, and that made Chen Ge feel a sense of regret. I know you'll find this strange, but isn't this exactly what certain people are hoping for? A smile appeared on the man's twisted face. After my accident, this number that has saved so many people was turned into a cursed number by those madmen. Anyone who called this number would end up in an accident and die on the street. They even made me into a horror story. And what I'm doing now is turning the horror story that they have made into reality. Quote. There was no joy in his voice, only coldness. Chen Ge understood what the man was thinking. He did not want to harm anyone, but in the end, he was the one who was hurt. Even after his death, he could not rest in peace. If the man's personality had not changed, then that would not make sense. After giving it some thought, Chen Ge slowly said, actually, I'm the same kind of person as you. We're both idiots who are willing to risk our lives. We're both the kind of people who think about others wholeheartedly but lose ourselves in the end. When the man heard what Chen Ge said, the frown on his face relaxed. He was about to say something but was interrupted by Chen Ge. But we're not exactly the same. The path that I chose is different from yours. You carry everything silently in your heart until you can't take it anymore. Actually, you don't have to work so hard. You can't change everyone, but you can change yourself. I'm not trying to turn you into a bad person. I'm just trying to make you understand your own importance. Chen Ge used his own personal experience to convince the man. I've met many bad people, and they come in all shapes and sizes. Some of them take away other people's lives to cure their own mental illness. Some of them destroy everything around them for some kind of obsession. There are also those who are born rotten to the core. They build unrequited love on the wall. I've seen many of them. His tone was even and calm. Chen Ge had indeed been through too much during this period of time. The man studied Chen Ge and realized that he did not appear to be lying. You've met so many bad people, so why would you risk your life to save a dead person? Did you realize this was a trap and figured out my intention beforehand? That's why you purposely did this. Quote. In the man's eyes, Chen Ge was a very smart person. He was able to deduce the location of the suicide victim from the static on the phone. Now he was suspicious of Chen Ge. He felt like this might be one of Chen Ge's tricks. I've met many bad people, but I'm not affected by them. I have my own way of living, and I have my own beliefs. No matter what those people say or do, I only need to do one thing well. Chen Ge stood across from the Red Spectre. Their power was not on the same level, but their presence was about the same. What is it? The man had once been confused like this, so he asked without thinking too much about it. I just need to be myself. Chen Ge had a normal appearance, but when he smiled, he was bright and sunny. No matter the situation, he could bring encouragement to others. Society is cruel, but I will maintain my own warmth. I don't care about those messy things. I just want to live my life to the fullest. Kindness and sincerity are enough. Is that all? The man opened his mouth to say something else, but at that moment, the train passed him, and it instantly separated him from Chen Ge. The ground shook, and in the rumbling, Chen Ge did not hear the rest of the man's words. The train flew away, and the light slowly disappeared from the horizon. Everything around them was swallowed by darkness again. In the dark night, Chen Ge and the man stood on opposite sides of the train, just like when they first met. Neither of them spoke again. Chen Ge did not know whether his persuasion would work or not. He really wanted to help the man, and at the same time, he wanted to prepare to save more people in eastern Zhejiang in the future. He felt like his goal was the same as the man's, and the man and the ghost should work together. Don't be so sad. There are still many things in this world that you have yet to enjoy. There are so many people standing behind you, and they have placed their last hope on you. You should live a life that they have never had. You should carry their wish and desire and become the person that they want to be. I believe that is what they are willing to see. With his hands in his pockets, and the night breeze ruffling his hair, Chen Ge said everything that he wanted to say. Standing in the dark, no one could see the crowd of people behind the man. He stood where he was for a long time before walking over from the other side of the train. With each step, the scent of blood on him would dissipate a little. When he stopped before Chen Ge, the red shirt had returned to its normal color, and he looked no different from a normal person. If not for the fact that he knew this beforehand, Chen Ge would not have guessed that this was a special red spectre who carried the lingering thoughts of many suicides. You shouldn't trap yourself in that small circle. You are not alone. You should let them experience happiness and sunshine. After all, that is what they desired the most when they were alive. Chen Ge saw the man nod slightly in agreement, and he revealed a kind smile. An interesting life is the best entertainment. Why don't you follow me for now? I will introduce you to some new friends, and you will slowly find that happiness and warmth. Follow you. The man's tone was strange. A normal person would run away from ghosts, but this young man before him was different. I am already surprised that you are not scared by me. There is no need to force yourself. I won't force myself. Chen Ge did not expect the man to still be thinking about him at a time like this, but he could not act too friendly, afraid that he might scare the man away. You are too considerate of others. I have taken in many homeless friends before, and I believe they will welcome you. In a few days, Chen Ge planned to go to eastern Zhejiang to do something big, so he had to convince the man to stay. Furthermore, the red spectre could turn into a normal person, and that was a very powerful power from Chen Ge's perspective. Other people thought he was a normal person or a normal spectre, but after he turned on them, they realized that he was actually a very scary red spectre. No matter how hard Chen Ge tried to persuade him, the man did not reply. He was different from other red specters. He had retained all his memories from when he was alive. Unlike Zhang Ya and Xu Yin, he had his own thoughts. I will go to the place where you live to take a look, but not now. The man showed a rare smile. After I complete the wishes that have been weighing on me, I will do as you say and return to being myself. The wishes of all the suicide victims. Chen Ge was reminded of the sea of shadows behind the man. If every shadow had left behind a wish to be completed, the next time the man met Chen Ge would probably be several years later. Chen Ge did not want the red specter that he had drawn out to be used several years later. He thought about it and asked, "Can you complete so many wishes alone? This is something that I have promised them. No matter what, I will do it." "You misunderstood me." Chen Ge waved his hand. "I mean, do you want me to help you complete their wishes? That will be faster. You don't want the souls of those suicide victims to be unable to rest for so long, right?" Quote. "You will help me." This time, the man was really moved. No one had ever acted like Chen Ge. "Don't worry, I have no other request. I just want you to understand that even if the world has abandoned you, there will be people who are willing to stand by your side." Chen Ge extended his hand. "By the way, I haven't asked for your name. How should I address you?" The man was silent for a long time before shaking Chen Ge's hand. "My name is Zhang Wenyu." Zhang Wenyu. Feeling the coldness in his palm, Chen Ge smiled from the bottom of his heart. "I'll remember your name. I will help you complete the final wish of the suicide victim. We'll have to keep in touch in the future." The man thought Chen Ge was a good person. He silently pulled his hand back and suddenly did not know what to say. He had not met anyone who understood him when he was alive, and he did not expect to meet one in death. "Do you have any final wishes that can be completed in Zhujiang? Let's find those that are closer to us first. I need to prepare those that require us to go to faraway places." Quote. Chen Ge was not joking when he said that he wanted to help the man complete the suicide victim's final wish. The man did not say anything. He was not sure whether he should do that or not. After all, he was the person who had to bear the victim's final wish. "Don't worry, I'm not being selfish, and I won't ask you to do anything to repay me. I'm just helping you out of convenience. You have to understand that many of the deceased's wishes will be hard to fulfill in your current state, but I'm different. I'm a living person, so you can leave the places that are inconvenient for you to appear to me." Chen Ge was telling the truth. The man was visibly shaken. It looked like he had run into many difficulties when he was trying to complete the final wishes of the deceased. "Okay, then I won't be so unreasonable." The man looked at Chen Ge, and the blood in his eyes completely disappeared. "You help me complete the final wishes of the suicide victims, and in return, I can help you do things that are not against my own will." "You'll help me?" "Yes, you help me complete one of the suicide victims' final wishes, and I'll help you do one thing. Isn't that fair?" Chen Ge did not expect the man to be so straightforward. With the man's insistence, he, reluctantly, agreed. The author's final wish is to make a horror movie that is loved by many and has a high box office. The theme park's mannequin wishes to confirm whether the landlord has received the utility bill that he left on his luggage. The cancer patient's final wish is to take care of his family. After you complete these 3 wishes, I'll tell you the final wishes of the other suicide victims. Hopefully, they won't have any regrets. After saying that, the man turned around. "If you want to contact me, just call that number." "Okay, I've memorized the number." Chen Ge watched as the man in the red shirt left. The black shadow walked down the tracks and disappeared into the distance. "This is going smoother than I expected. I should take some time to complete these final wishes. If I run into danger in eastern Zhujiang, this brother won't just stand by and do nothing." Chen Ge planned to deal with everything in eastern Zhujiang before the futuristic theme park opened for business. He did not waste time. He found his backpack and left in the opposite direction from the man. Of the 3 wishes, the theme park worker's wish is the easiest, and the cancer patient's wish is easy as well. The hardest is the author's wish. He wants to make a horror movie that will have a good reputation in box office. That's a bit too difficult. Chen Ge did not understand why an author's last wish was to make a movie. A qualified haunted house worker has to be a good actor. I have no problem with the choice, but who will the movie be for? How can I guarantee that the movie will be popular? Chen Ge did not know anything about movies. Yan Danian's wish to become a famous comic artist hasn't come true, and now there's another one to make a movie. I'm just a haunted house owner. Do I need to learn about movies? It was too difficult for a horror movie to become popular, and Chen Ge did not plan to give it a try. I have enough actors, but I lack technical guidance and funding. In the future, I should pay attention to this kind of talent. If it really becomes popular, It'll be a kind of promotion for my haunted house. After returning to the children's theme park, Chen Ge knocked on the landlady's door again. Big sister, I'm here for my friend again. Have you found the money he left on your luggage? The door opened, and the middle-aged woman looked at Chen Ge like he was crazy. What do you mean? He's been gone for a long time, and now you're here to ask me if I've received the utility bill. Quote. It's like this. The brother didn't have anything to worry about before he left. Fine, I won't lie to you. I've thrown away his luggage. His stuff is unlucky. The landlady sounded impatient. You've thrown it away. Chen Ge was startled, but he soon recovered. How much did he owe for utilities and rent at the time? More than 280. Why? Do you plan to pay for him? Quote. The middle-aged woman turned to look at Chen Ge with a cold expression. Then she saw Chen Ge take out 300 RMB from his pocket. Before he left, he was afraid that something like this would happen, so he specifically told me to take the money. Take the money, and I hope you don't mind. No matter what choice he made, he never owed anyone anything. Quote. After paying the woman the utility bill, Chen Ge hailed a cab and left. Returning to New Century Park, Chen Ge opened the door to the staff break room. When he sat down on the chair, his body finally relaxed. His expression slowly changed. Chen Ge thought back to everything that had happened that night, and there was one question that he did not understand. When I ran into the suicide operator, I called Zhang Ya's name in my heart, but there was no response. Did she already see that the man in red was not a threat, or did the injury on her arm worsen? Zhang Ya refused to come out from the shadow, and Chen Ge did not know about her condition, so he could not help her even if he wanted to. Is it possible that she's hungry? Do I need to capture some specters for her? Chen Ge felt like he had to give it a try. Xiao Biyu told me that going back to Liwan City will be dangerous, but I can go to other places in eastern Zhejiang. I need to finish the 2-star mission on the black phone first. With the decision made, he did not think too much. He removed his jacket and lay down in bed to sleep. At 8 a.m., after washing up, Chen Ge walked out from the haunted house. He pushed the gate open and looked at the rising sun. A new day has begun. Before he could finish, the black phone in his pocket suddenly vibrated as if to cooperate with him. Why is there a message at a time like this? Taking out the phone, Chen Ge clicked open the unread message. Midnight ticket counter's special ability activated. A special visitor has arrived. Quote. Looking at the screen, Chen Ge did not react for a long time. I haven't even opened for business, so where did this special visitor come from? Is there something wrong with this phone? Quote. Holding the phone, Chen Ge looked around. He suddenly realized that at the entrance of the park, the guard was arguing with someone.